Hope you are all fine. Being 10th standard students, you might keep to your ambitions, study the daily lessons and get good marks. Okay? You all know that we had already started the lessons of history, and let me introduce the chapters once more. You can see on the screen, Rise of Nationalism in Europe, the first chapter. The second chapter, Nationalism in India. The third, The Making of the Global World. And the last one is Print Culture and the Modern World. All these lessons are easy. Only thing what you have to do is, you have to study the daily lessons. Right? Now let us go to the first chapter. What are the things we are going to study this year? So first chapter is Rise of Nationalism in Europe. In this chapter, we are going to study how nation states have developed. How nation states have been developed. A nation state should have a defined territory. They should have a defined territory. They should have a centralized administration. And also they should have a collective sense among them. They should have a collective sense among them. In other words, they should have their own identities. Now, what are the identities? What do you mean by the term identities? You know that we are all Indians. We have our own symbols like our national flag, our national anthem, our national animal, etc. So together, when we think about a nation state should have a defined territory. That means it should have a good boundary. It should have a good boundary. It should have a centralized administration, and it should have a collective sense. Once more, identities like national anthem, national song, etc. So nation states. In the first chapter itself, you can see that the lesson starts by introducing a French artist, Frédéric Soriot, who's having an utopian vision. The meaning, what comes to his mind is, utopian vision means a distinct nation. A distinct nation means there should be something that nation should have. For example, we know that the difference between India, the identities of India and the identities of Pakistan. We are having our own flag. Pakistan is having their own flag. So India is a nation state, Pakistan is a nation state, they have their own identities. When we see these identities, we have a thought of patriotism. When we say of India, we are Indians. Our nation is India. Okay. Then Frédéric Soriot's utopian vision, you have studied already, and we also studied about what is meant by nation states. And the next chapter is dealing with nationalism in India, where you are going to study about the struggles of Indians against the British imperialism in India. How the Indians had struggled to attain independence. What were the mass movements followed by Indians to attain independence? So we will be studying about the role of peasants, we will be studying about the role of tribals, the role of plantations, and at last we know how much they had struggled, and we also should always remember these people who are behind forgetting our independence. The next chapter is the making of the global world, globalization. You will be studying this in economics also, and globalization is an economic process where there is an integration and interaction among the people. That means there will be an exchange of ideas, culture and trade, intermingling of people all around the world. So that chapter is the making of global world. Next we go to print culture and the modern world. Here you are going to study about handwritten materials were being converted to printing materials. You know that the printing machine is found out by Johann Gutenberg. He was born in Germany, and we know that handwritten materials, mainly the manuscripts, it was written by hand. So all these things we are going to study in these 4 chapters. All the 4 chapters are very easy unless you follow the daily lessons. study the notes properly and prepare your own notes and be good at home. And also when the teachers are taking class, don't be distracted. Okay, now we go to the first lesson, Rise of Nationalism in Europe. Here you have already studied about the French identities. We can just brush up through the points already what we have studied. You can look on the board here. The first, La Patrie and Les Citoyens, was a notion of a united community. This is related to France, the first mother revolution of the world. It is this French Revolution which had been inspired. People was inspired by the three ideals of French Revolution: liberty, fraternity, and equality. You know that even in India, Rajaram Mohan Roy and Tipu Sultan was inspired by the French Revolution. So the two Indian leaders, don't forget, Rajaram Mohan Roy and Tipu Sultan. Okay, now the second point you can see, a new French flag replaced the royal standard. A French flag was being designed by the artist. The design had a color red, white and blue. What is the color of an Indian flag? Okay, we all know it is saffron, white and green. Similar manner, during the time of revolution, the people or the artists of France, they prepared a French flag with these three colors, and these are all the identities of the French people. Secondly, Estates General was changed into National Assembly. You know what was the Estates General? French society was divided into three: the clergies, nobles and common people. Okay, it is the common people who had formed the National Assembly. You all have studied detailed in 9th standard, right? So, during the time of French Revolution, National Assembly was changed into Estates General was changed into National Assembly. Okay, then another identities, new hymns were being written, oaths were taken, martyrs were commemorated in the name of nation. In the name of nation, what does our pledge start with? Come on, well, how do our pledge start? India is my country, is it? India is my country. So we take oath in the name of nation. So the French people, the French artists, poets, all, they decided everything to start in the name of nations. Then uniform laws were introduced. A centralized administration also was introduced, and French was declared as a common language of the nation. You have to keep in your mind that France, it was a territory which lots of people speaking different languages, but once after the revolution, the people adopted a common language which was known as French. So these were the French identities which brought out a collective sense in the minds of people. Collective sense means they began to think that they are a part of a nation. So you understood, a formation of a nation state. So in order to have a nation state, identities are must. So these are the French identities you can see on the board there. Now next, we are moving towards another great personality, a ruler who had ruled France in the year 1804 onwards. He is still remembered or considered as the strongest commander. His deeds and his valor is even discussed in the lessons of the military classes. That much hero was Napoleon. So when Napoleon became the ruler of France, he had also introduced various administrative reforms. So what happened he became the ruler in 1804. He brought out another right, men having equal freedom, and they had the right for working at any occupations. And also Napoleon, he abolished feudal system, privileges enjoyed by the clergies, and also the main reform he introduced was weights and measures were introduced up to decimal point. Everyone was considered as equal under his reforms during that time. So Napoleon Bonaparte. So you might think, what was the cause or what was the reason for his defeat in the Battle of Waterloo? See, Battle of Waterloo was in the year 1815. We know that the strongest enemy of France is Britain. And under the leadership of Britain, Prussia, Russia and Austria defeated Napoleon in the Battle of Waterloo in the year 1815. And Napoleon was exiled to St. Helena, an island near to Italy. So Napoleon was one of a great leader of France who had introduced lots of reforms, and one drawback of Napoleon, what the neighboring territories found, is that he was forcing people to enter into the army of France. This created enmity. And not only that, you might be remembering the class in 9th standard about how, as he became the ruler of France, first of all what he did was he defeated the neighboring monarchs and he placed his relatives on the throne. That was the main cause of enmity among the monarchs in Europe during that time. Okay. So even though he had introduced reforms there, he had lots of enemies, and ultimately his defeat in the Battle of Waterloo. Okay, next we are going to study about German unification. Okay. So German unification, we had already studied about the Frankfurt Assembly. You studied about the Frankfurt Assembly. Do you remember? It was in the year 1848. Representatives of German territories marched to St. Paul. They had marched to the church St. Paul, and they framed a constitution. They framed a constitution forming a parliament, but the Prussian ruler was not ready to accept the crown during the time. With the help of the landlords of Prussia, what was the name of the landlords of Prussia? Junkers. So with the help of Junkers or the rich landlords, the Frankfurt Assembly, which you had studied, the Frankfurt Assembly, which was in the year, it was in May 1848, was a failure for the liberals there. And this failure brought out to another great work, which was known as German unification, and it was under the initiative of a great person known as Ottoman Bismarck. Ottoman Bismarck, he was the chief minister of the Prussian king, and he is known as the Iron Man. He is known as Iron Man. He had a great willpower. I will unite Germany. I will play a leading role to bring the unification of Germany. As a result, he conducted 3 wars for 7 years with Austria, Denmark and France, and this ended in the Prussian victory. And the Prussian king, William II, was crowned the king of Germany, the unified Germany. And keep in your mind that William II was crowned the king of, or the ruler of, unified Germany from the Versailles Palace. Can you think about the Versailles Palace we studied in 9th standard? Okay, this Versailles Palace was built by Louis XIV, and there was a great hall known as the Hall of Mirrors. All important decisions was taken in this hall. Okay, and this person, the ruler William II, was crowned as the ruler of Germany in this palace known as the Versailles Palace. Now what about the identities of the people there? They also should have an identity because Germany is going to develop as a nation state. So there, what the people of Germany did was, they borrowed the identities of Prussia like banking, legal system and currency. So the identities of Germany was being borrowed from the Prussian Empire, which was banking, legal system and currency. So the architect of German unification is Otto Bismarck, and the chief power, the main power behind this unification is Prussia. Don't forget, the main power behind the unification is Prussia, and the chief architect is Otto Bismarck. Otto Bismarck, he is known as the Iron Man. Otto Bismarck. So the chief architect, and Prussia the strongest power. The rich landlords of Prussia, they are known as Junkers. The Frankfurt Assembly was convened in St. Paul. They had formed a constitution, a parliament there, which was dissolved with the help of the Jungers there. And after that, the German unification was made under the leadership of Otto and Bismarck, and the Prussian king William II was crowned the king of the unified Germany. Understood? Now let us move to the next topic. We are going to learn about, now you can see the leaders on the board here, Otto and Bismarck. Look at his face, how shrewd he is. And look at William II, the German emperor. Now to tell something about William II, children, you have to keep in your mind that this William II was also a conservative. Conservatives were the people who believed in privileges, clergies, institutions like churches, privileges, etc. So gradually these conservatives, they began to form the modern army. They wanted a flourishing economy. So conservatives came to know that only if they want to bring the common people to their side, they should be lenient in their certain measures. As a result, he was ready to accept the ruler of the unified Germany. So William II became the ruler of Germany. It was in the year 1871. So the German unification was in the year 1871. Don't forget, one-word answers can be asked for Jungers. The year of German unification, who was the power behind the German unification, who was Ottoman, Bismarck, etc. Short questions can be asked, one-word answers can be asked. You have to keep in your mind, the first question comes from history for your board exam. Right. Now we move to the next part of the lesson, that is the Balkan Crisis. So Balkan, you might be thinking, what is the term Balkan means? So it is an area which consists of 8 states which were under the control of Ottoman Turks. We studied that European countries were under monarchs who had their dynasties, various names, like the Russians had the Romanov, the French had the Bourbon dynasty. Okay, the Prussian Empire was known as the Hohenzollern dynasty, and the another one was the Ottoman Empire. It was controlled by the Turks there. And these Balkan areas included states like Greece, Montenegro, Albania, Bosnia, Macedonia, Serbia, Croatia, Bulgaria, etc. and etc. What you have to keep in your mind, even though they were under the control of Ottoman Turks, gradually, the rule of the Ottoman Turks declined. That is, the power of the rulers began to decline, and these Balkan areas decided to assert independence. In this context, you have to keep in the mind the role of romanticists. Who are these romanticists? So, romanticists are the people who spread culture among the people, is it? Romanticists are the people who spread culture among the people through what and all? They write poems, they write essays, they write songs, the artists, they draw allegories, etc. So by reading or seeing all these things, people develop a sense of collectiveness in their mind. So romanticists played an important role to spread nationalism in these areas. And also, because of the declining of the Ottoman Empire, European nations also began to support these Balkan states. You have to study some of the names of the Balkan areas, children. And the rivalry between the European powers led to First World War. You know that? The First World War began in the year 1914, and the main reason for this is the Balkan Crisis. Right? So Balkan Crisis, you have to take down in your notes, study properly. It's a question always asked for the board exam. You will be getting 3 marks question, 5 marks question, and study it today itself and keep your notes and all completed by evening. Okay. Now, what you have to do is, children, please take the notebook and write down what and all I had explained to you all. In the form of lecture note also you can write, and also already you have written the lecture note, and from that you copy down and write about the German unification, write about the Balkan crisis, the French identities, the role of Napoleon, etc. So one thing children you have to keep in your mind is nation states are developed, nation states have definite territories, they have their own common identities, and they have a centralized administration. So, to give examples of nation state, Germany, France, Italy, India, all these are nation state, and you have to keep in your mind, it is the struggle of common people that all these things happen. They were middle class people also included the educated middle class people who inspired the minds of the people to attain, to bring about revolution and make their territories into a nation state. So don't forget children, learn all this. All the best. See you in the next class. Thank you.